All right, so let's jump into a deep dive on some recent EV news that's got people talking. We're looking at Tesla's Cybertruck, and well, it's a kind of rough start to winter driving. We've got some stuff from social media, and also some articles detailing, those unexpected challenges, you might say, that this kind of futuristic pickup is having with just plain snow.
Yeah, that is interesting. The Cybertruck, that hard angular
Yeah.
design meant to be, rugged, and then it's having trouble with snow.
Exactly. You'd think something built for tough terrain wouldn't have any issues with a bit of snow, right? So what's actually going on here? One of the biggest stories is this New York State trooper, Joe Fay. He posted a TikTok video, and it shows snow completely blocking the Cybertruck's headlights. I mean, you would think a police officer of all people, somebody who needs their vehicle to be reliable no matter what, would be the last person to have this kind of problem.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the design. Based on the videos and reports, it seems like, that unique shape of the Cybertruck and the headlights being so low might be why. The snow just piles up on that flat front, and it's like a drift right over the headlights.
Yeah, and it's not just a little annoying either. Faye even says in his video that there were times it was actually dangerous, especially driving at night. He even said he needed to use a hammer at one point to get the ice off the headlights just so he could see.
Wow, a hammer. That's wild. You've got this like futuristic, almost alien vehicle, and the owners out there with a hammer dealing with something so basic. It really shows you how aesthetics and practicality can clash.
And get this, it wasn't just the headlights. Later, Faye found out the side cameras, the ones that are supposed to give you the 360 view, were also blocked by snow. So now he can't see ahead of him and he can't see around him.
Oh, that's not good. That's a big deal, especially with how big and heavy the Cybertruck is. If you can't see properly in a truck like that, it's an accident waiting to happen.
And it sounds like Faye's not alone. Lots of other Cybertruck owners online are saying the same thing about their headlights getting blocked. One owner even said that when the snow melts and refreezes, it basically makes a wall of ice in front of the headlights that they have to chip away.
Huh. So it's not just a one-off thing then. It sounds like there might be a design flaw that needs fixing.
Okay, so we've got headlights and cameras getting buried in snow. Now let's shift gears and head up north to Alberta, Canada. That's where another Cybertruck owner, Rob Roth, has some major problems with his brand new truck in ASA 18-degree-C weather. He actually called it his Cyber Beast, which makes the whole thing even funnier.
What happened? Was it the battery range? Did the cold mess with that?
It was way worse than that. Roth said the whole system crashed. He couldn't use the defroster, he couldn't switch between drive and reverse, and then the truck just died.
Yeah.
He needed a tow truck in the end.
Wow. A total system failure in that kind of cold makes you think there's something vulnerable about the Cybertruck systems. Maybe something to do with how it relies on a heat pump to be energy efficient.
Yeah, that's right. Heat pumps are great when it's mild out, but they can really struggle in extreme cold, and that doesn't just affect how comfortable you are inside. It can mess with the core functions of the vehicle, too.
And this situation brings up another important point about EVs in general. Software problems in extreme temperatures. Cold can sometimes interfere with the electronics that control a lot of the vehicle systems, and that could lead to, unexpected errors or even malfunctions. It's interesting, this whole thing with Rob Roth's Cybertruck up in Alberta. It really shows you how tough it is to design an EV that can handle all sorts of climates, especially when you think about places where it gets super cold all the time.
Right. We always hear about how much better batteries are getting and how far EVs can go on a single charge. But these incidents are a good reminder that there's more to it than that when it comes to making them reliable everywhere.
Absolutely. And that's where really understanding the tech comes in. Like take the heat pump, for example. It's great for heating and cooling in normal weather, but when it gets really cold, it just can't keep up.
Can you break that down a bit more for our listeners? How does a heat pump even work, and why does it struggle so much in the cold?
Sure. Think of it like a refrigerator, but instead of taking heat out of a box, it's pumping it into the car. It uses this special liquid called refrigerant that absorbs heat from the outside air even when it's cold, and then releases that heat inside the vehicle. But when the temperature outside drops way down, there's just not enough heat for the refrigerant to grab, and the whole system loses its efficiency.
So basically, in Rob Roth's case, the heat pump in his Cybertruck just couldn't keep up with how cold it was outside at negative 18 degrees C. That's probably why his defroster wasn't working and why the other systems started to fail.
Yeah, that's probably what happened. And this kind of points to a potential problem with this trend of using heat pumps in EVs to make them more efficient. It's a good idea in places where the weather's pretty mild, but maybe not the best solution for places that get those super cold winters.
So what are the alternatives? Are there other heating systems that would work better in those conditions?
Oh yeah, there are other options. Some EV companies are trying out these resistive heating systems that use electric coils to generate heat directly. They might not be as efficient as heat pumps, but they're much more consistent no matter how cold it gets outside.
So it sounds like it's a trade-off then between efficiency and how well it works in extreme cold.
Yeah, pretty much. Maybe the best solution is to use both technologies, like a system that uses a heat pump when it's not too cold and then switches to resistive heating when the temperature drops below a certain point.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, you also mentioned something about software vulnerabilities in extreme cold. Could you tell us a bit more about that? What exactly can go wrong with the software when an EV is out in freezing temperatures?
Well, just think about it. All the cool features and functions in an EV depend on software and electronics, and all those things can be pretty sensitive to changes in temperature.
So basically, the extreme cold can mess with the brains of the vehicle.
Haha, in a way, yeah. For example, the software that manages how the battery performs can be affected by cold temperatures, which might mean you get less range or it takes longer to charge. And the sensors that control things like the brakes and steering could be affected too, which could lead to problems with how the car drives or even safety issues.
That's a bit scary. Sounds like a lot can go wrong when an EV is out in the cold.
It's definitely something to keep in mind. That's why it's so important for manufacturers to do really thorough testing in all kinds of environments, including those with extreme temperatures. That way they can find and fix these potential problems before they become a big issue.
So going back to the Cybertruck, it seems like these incidents are showing us some potential areas where the design and testing could be better.
I think that's a fair assessment. The Cybertruck, with its radical design and focus on technology, is pushing the boundaries of what EVs can be. But these problems are a reminder that innovation needs to go hand in hand with practicality and real-world testing.
It's like they made this cool, futuristic truck, but if it can't even handle snow or cold weather, then it's not really living up to the whole tough and reliable image.
Right, and this is where I think the whole EV industry can learn something from this. As EVs become more and more common, we need to go beyond just the hype and make sure we're delivering vehicles that are actually tough, reliable, and able to perform well in all conditions.
So what would that look like? What needs to change in how EVs are designed, tested, and even marketed to address these concerns?
I think it starts with recognizing that EVs, while a huge step forward in making transportation more sustainable, are still a work in progress. They're complex systems with unique vulnerabilities, and those need to be addressed through rigorous testing and continuous improvement.
So we need to balance the excitement with a bit of realism.
Exactly, and that realism needs to be part of how EVs are designed, tested, and marketed. We need to see more emphasis on real-world testing, especially in tough climates, to make sure they can handle anything. And we need more honesty from the manufacturers about the potential downsides of EVs so people can make informed decisions.
And maybe a little less focus on how cool and futuristic they are and more on the practical side of owning and driving an EV day to day. So what needs to change? What are the big takeaways for the people making these cars, the people making the rules, and even just regular drivers?
I think the most important thing is to do more and better testing. Manufacturers can't just rely on the standard tests. They need to put these vehicles through their paces in all sorts of real-world situations, like extreme cold, heavy snow and icy roads.
Yeah, like take those EVs out of the lab and throw them on a real Canadian highway in the middle of January, see how they hold up when it really matters.
Exactly. And all that testing should inform not just how the vehicle works, but also how it's designed. We need to see more thought put into how snow and ice build up, how the cold affects the battery and software, and just how easy these vehicles are to use in the winter.
And it's not all on the manufacturers either. The people making the rules have a part to play too. They need to create incentives and build the infrastructure to help people adopt EVs in colder climates.
Absolutely. Things like public charging stations that can handle bad weather tax breaks for buying EVs that are proven to do well in the cold, even just educating people about what it's like to own an EV in the winter.
So it's a team effort. Manufacturers need to step up. Policymakers need to make it easier, and drivers need to be informed and ready for the challenges of owning an EV no matter what the season.
That's right. And I think we need to be realistic. This change isn't going to be perfectly smooth. There will be problems, there will be setbacks, and everyone's going to have to learn as we go.
But it's a goal worth fighting for. A cleaner, more sustainable way to get around is something we should all be working towards.
I agree. And these challenges, even though they're frustrating sometimes, are actually chances to learn, come up with new ideas, and ultimately build EVs that are truly ready for the real world no matter what the weather throws at them.
So for everyone listening out there, especially those of you in those colder climates, what's the one thing you should take away from our deep dive into the Cybertruck's winter struggles?
I'd say don't let these stories scare you away from EVs altogether. The technology is getting better all the time, and the industry is learning from these mistakes. But do your research, ask questions, and know what you might be getting into, especially if you live somewhere with rough winters.